Hi, I'm Will Roosh, the host of Cylinder Radio. Over the past 4 years, I've interviewed very interesting people from very different walks of life. And I'm going to start a new series called Living a Life That Demands an Explanation. There are people that I've met both on the podcast and out in the world that live a life that just truly baffles me. People that are incredibly selfless. And the mindset that they have in the world is something that I just don't understand, and I need to know more. So this is the first of a series called Living a Life That Demands an Explanation. I hope that these conversations are entertaining, inspiring, and as always, give you new perspectives. All right, Mindy Churchill. I'm so excited to start this new series, trying to figure out how this fit into my podcast. I just wanted a chance to talk with you about everything you're doing. And then I was like, how do I fit this into the whole cylinder thing? It's like, doesn't. So I'm starting this new series. The idea of how people build these lives that outsiders go, what is going on? This is crazy. So
What's that about?
Yeah, you are friends with my wife. And she told me about you before we ever met.
Right.
And I was like, all right, I gotta talk to her. So I don't even know where to start, but essentially, let's go in with your motherly duties.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
They are many. Are many.
How many kids do you have?
This is everyone's favorite question.
Yeah.
I have 7.
7 kids.
I have 7. Yes.
Okay, and then what's the breakdown? Because some are biological.
Yes. So 6 are biological. We have 1 adopted.
Okay. So what is the challenge of having 7 children?
Being outnumbered.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but I always explain it like once you get past 2, you're already outnumbered.
Okay.
And then it's just 1 more peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
You're already doing the thing. That's oversimplifying, but you're already doing it. You're already going to places. You're doing the things. You're in the routine of taking the things and the places, and your life's already on fast forward. And it's just another one comes in and another one comes in, and you just, all right, get a bigger car. Let's go.
Yeah. What kind of car do you have? You have like a giant
So
trailer, a horse trailer?
No, that's actually a great idea. But no, we have a 12-passenger van. But my oldest is 21, and my youngest is 9. So we still have it, but it's kind of like the extra vehicle now. Everybody's like running all the places, and we actually don't really go anywhere all together, even to church anymore. Like someone's going early, and then the late ones are coming along after. So even then, we're not really even all in the same vehicle.
So was it a plan of yours forever, your whole life, to have a big family?
No.
So what led you to want to?
It just kept happening. Just kept happening.
It wasn't like a planned thing?
No, we were thinking maybe 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And then after that, we were scheduled for a vasectomy, and the company he worked with shut down.
Oh.
So that meant okay, well, pause that. That's not happening. That was after the 4th. And then we, moved to a different state, and whoops, Ruby, surprise. So they're coming number 5.
Okay. And
then we'll let it to adoption. And then, number 7 was kind of another oh yeah, we moved here. We should okay. So after number 7, I have a tubes tied.
So your 6th was adopted.
Yes.
So what would I think that's what makes your story more unique, because there are a lot of Irish Catholic families that have a ton of kids. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, we're not that weird.
So what is it that after you have 5 children,
right,
you were like, I'm going to adopt?
Right. So for us, really, it kind of came from the birth of our 4th. So our 4th child was born with Down syndrome. And I remember kind of joking with God when we thought that might be possible, because that won't happen to us. Our 2nd child has autism. We've already played the special needs card. We won't have another one. What are the odds? Well, for us, they were 1 in 8. Turns out we had blood tests done. And so our 4th was born with Down syndrome. And that turned out to be the gift we never thought to ask for. I have said over and over and over again, he's the best thing that ever happened to our family. It just allowed us to slow down, to not take things for granted. when your baby's gonna stay a baby for a really long time.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. But that also means your 3-year-old is gonna be in the terrible threes for a really long time.
Yeah.
So they just brought different challenges, different things we didn't know. So we just appreciated things, like things other people would take for granted, like their child rolling over, um, sitting up,
Yeah.
walking. Those things, talking took significant effort and a lot of therapy for us to get to that point. So we just appreciated and cherished every little bit of it.
Our old next door neighbor had a child with Down syndrome, and the way she explained it, I thought was really beautiful. She said, "It's like you're packing for a vacation with all of your friends for
Yeah,
Cancun, and you pack up all your swimsuit and everything, and everyone's on the plane. And then you get off the plane, you're actually in Paris,
yeah,
and, everyone else is in Cancun
yep,
because everyone's like, 'Oh, you're having a baby? Yeah, I have a baby.' And,
yeah.
and you're in Paris, and Paris is beautiful, but it's just not what you
It's not,
expected."
no, no. There's a beautiful poem about that called "Welcome
Oh,
to Holland."
oh, so
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You think you're going to Italy,
yeah,
and the plane lands in Holland, and you're like, "What the heck? I was going to see all these things," and but you realize Holland has windmills and
yeah.
tulips and all of these beautiful works of art. Like it's beautiful in its own way, even if it's not what you expected. Is it hard as hell sometimes?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And is there do other people get it in the same way? No, but there are
Yeah.
parts of their life that I don't get. So I don't ever really feel like it's so much harder than somebody else's. It's just different.
So you had a kid with autism,
Yep.
and then you had a kid with Down syndrome,
Yep.
and then you decided to adopt.
Right. Well, we had a little girl in between, and then
Okay.
the church we were really active in had a very active foster and adoption agency or program
Yeah.
ministry just in general. And we knew after having adopted Jonas, I just dove into the whole community in general, and there was a huge it's still very active, a community called Reese's Rainbow that was active in countries like Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe and other places as well, China and other places where children with disabilities are sent, for lack of a better word, and they certain
Sent from where? Just from all over
from
the
their,
country.
yeah, from their homes, and their
Okay.
families don't, depending on the culture that they're in, it's um, bad luck. It's a terrible thing to have happen to their family, and
Right.
so it's, whether by choice or culture or just inability to take care of them, they place them in these institutions. And some are loving, and then usually most places they can stay at what they call a baby house until
Okay.
they're a few years old, and then they go into just an institution, a mental institution, and most of them die.
So you had your son with Down syndrome, and then you decided to adopt.
Yeah, so this church
A,
had a great ministry for adoption, and I was like, okay, if we're going to adopt, I think it should be from the Down syndrome community because we're not scared of it. Like at this point, Jonas is like
yeah, I
2 or 3 years old, and like, okay, well, he's gonna live with us forever. I mean, a lot of everything he was very naive. I absolutely know that, but he's gonna live with us. Um, and if we could help another family who doesn't feel equipped to parent that child and chose to give it life instead of abort, then how can we not do that?
right, because you were saying earlier before we were recording that 90% of
Yeah.
Down syndrome babies are
That,
aborted.
yeah, and so other places it's some higher. There are countries who actually have closer to 100% termination rate. I hope that number's lower now because it's not a death sentence. I'm hoping that doctors and um, people that are helping you throughout prenatal time are a little more educated. That it's not, doesn't mean you're gonna have a bad life. It just means things are gonna be different.
Yeah. Okay. So you have 7 kids, 2 with Down syndrome, 1 with autism.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yep, yep.
So your house is just nuts.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting all the time.
So okay. So I guess what it is like, what what do you, if you put yourself? Sorry, I'm a little sick, but if you put yourself in the mindset of those 90%, and like, do you understand to some degree why people, even just if you take like the concept, like the morality of abortion off the table, just the
Yeah,
idea of why people just go like,
hard.
yeah, like, is it,
Yeah.
what is it? Is it just like, that's just not what I had planned? It's too hard.
I
Yeah.
think it's the death of a dream that you have. And I think it's perfectly okay to mourn that.
The expectation
Yeah.
hangover thing.
Like, I
Yeah.
think life's gonna look like this, and we're gonna go here, and I have it. Or if it's a girl, like we're gonna go wedding dress shopping, and this is
Yeah.
what life's gonna be like. But nobody gets guarantees. Nobody gets guarantees. You could step out in front of a bus tomorrow and be wheelchair bound for the rest of your life, and someone taking care of you. And I tell you what, my kids are a lot more independent than some people who are had to be bound in that way physically.
Yeah.
So I think it's just how, and a matter of how you look at things. And some things you get to choose, and some things you don't. Some things are just handed to you. Um, so I mean, in one case, we didn't choose Down syndrome. In another case, we very much specifically went looking for it. Like we're like, yep, give us another.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's been a whole other journey. So I mean, I can see um, human nature is to go with ease. How do I make myself comfortable? And um, is life hard for Jonas? Heck, or for Henry? No. Oh my gosh.
How old are the two of them?
So Jonas is 15.
Okay.
He is the mayor of Salem High School.
Yeah.
Absolutely the mayor. Henry is now the all-star of Kell Grade School basketball team. They don't think there is anything wrong with their life at all, except when they're not allowed to play video games, or when they don't, like any child, when they don't get their way, or any adult, any human that doesn't get their way. They really are more alike than different than anyone else.
Something that's I feel like a theme here is control. Like, you're not a control freak? For lack of a better
My
term.
husband might disagree
Yeah.
on some things, but no, I think maybe I was initially.
But you seem just like, all right, here's the hand. Like, so I think about like in poker. Here's
Right.
the hand that we're dealt. Okay, I'm gonna play this.
Right.
Instead of like, you could bitch and complain forever about what the hand is,
Right.
but
It's
what's
not
your
gonna
best
change it.
option?
Right,
Yeah,
it's not
so
gonna
play it
change
best
it.
you can.
Yeah. How do I'm playing poker. I chose to play like it's
Yeah.
fun. Like why
Yeah.
do it if you're not gonna enjoy it? Um, some days are really, really hard. And then they're harder with my special needs kids because they're
Yeah.
it's just parenting in general. Some days are hard.
Do you know what though? When you say hard, I was just listening. I think it was on a Joe Rogan podcast or something. He said the hardest thing that someone's ever experienced is the hardest thing they've ever experienced, regardless of how like objectively hard it is.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
That is so true.
Yeah, I
You
teach in like
can't
an affluent
compare.
community now,
Yeah.
and like these kids, like they come in and if it's 73 degrees, they're like it's dying, it's so hot, and if it's 68, they're like I'm freezing because
Right.
they've had very protected, sheltered, bubble wrapped lives.
Yeah.
So their anxiety is extremely high.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. It's a
And
very
it's
subjective
real.
thing.
It feels
It's very real for
real
them.
to
Yes.
them. So for someone to downplay that or dismiss it,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel good.
That's the way I feel about like microaggressions. Because a lot of people say like, oh, they're just nonsense. Like, no. Like that's very real, and we got to address that. Like, you could say all day, well, it's because you live this kind of life, or you're a shelter, or you're weak, or whatever.
It's still my
Whatever.
life.
Yeah, whatever. Like, it's still
life.
very real for them, and it's something to address. And just dismissing it, we all get upset over things that other people would see as small, because everyone has like I had Sydney Smith in the podcast who has no legs, and he's just like super go getter mentality. And when I don't want to get up and go for a run, I'm like, what's my excuse? Like Sydney, you know what I mean? Like we all fall into that because there's people who have different hurdles in life.
Yeah. Well, people are like, oh my gosh, you're so special. Like God just chose you. That's garbage. That's garbage. I don't believe that. I believe we're like you get the hand, and then you have to decide. What am I? I'm not lucky. Like my kids aren't necessarily lucky. Like this is the thing. This is the life you have. What are you gonna do with it? Are you gonna choose to like spend your life upset and miserable and like, if only my life would look different. I could X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are restrictions in your family. For a season, you have to do things a certain way. We're in a different season now, and like I know one day my other kids will grow up and maybe move out. I don't know what the future looks like, and I've really been very careful early on, even after Jonas was born, trying not to think too far into the future because it would get a little scary.
Yeah.
I would see swear God put every kind of Down syndrome in front of me when I was pregnant with Jonas. It was kind of, it's who talks about that? Ed Milet talks about that. The filtering system, the reticulating. I'm gonna mess it up. But anyway, it's like this thing where you drive by a blue Honda and suddenly you see blue Hondas everywhere.
Yeah.
So when we knew we were kind of maybe expecting a child potentially with Down syndrome, I saw it everywhere. And being a little nervous about like, seeing a gal at the bus stop, with her, she has they have very different anatomy and just smaller.
Yeah.
So her tongue is regular size and her face is smaller, so like they look like their tongue is large. And like just she was taking the bus and me being like, oh gosh, what's life gonna be like for him? And I was like, wait a minute. Life for this gal looks way different than life for someone with Down syndrome 20 years ago before that.
Yeah.
Like at that point, her parents were probably told that they could choose to put her in an institution and go home and say that their baby died. Like that's typically what happened in our country 40, 50 years ago. It wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah.
But so now when I think like, you don't know what life's going to look like 20 years from now. You don't know the world that Jonas is going to be Henry's able to walk into in 10 or 15 years. It's going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. And with technology and stuff like that, for sure. How far along were you when you found out that Jonas was?
I knew it was possible because I had miscarried for the third time the month before I got pregnant with him. So this was when they had just started offering the was the first trimester screening. So it was a blood test and an ultrasound at like 13 weeks. Well, I had miscarried at 14. So I was like, if this means I get a chance to see my baby, maybe for the only time, I'm sign me up. What do you need? You need blood? You need urine? What do you have to have for me? I want to see. If this is the only chance I get to see my child this side of heaven, sign me up. I'm doing it. So I did it just because like it was an ultrasound. And so then my midwife calls me and we're like 13 weeks. And she said, all right, so I got your numbers back. You're in elevated risk for Down syndrome. I'm like, well, what are the numbers? Yeah. I was like, well, what are the numbers? I was like, yeah, what are they? She's like 1 in 8. Okay. All right. That's worth a phone call. Yeah. Because at that age of 27, my numbers statistically were like 1 in 750.
Right.
Yeah. So for them to go that different, I was like, all right. So I'm like, what happens now? Then it's like, do we test? Do we not test? What do I do? What's the right thing to do here? Having lived through 3 miscarriages, I was like, I don't know if I can be the one person who has an amnio, and we're small percentage people. Yeah, I felt like like we're small percentage people.
Lottery.
Right. I was like, do I want to be? The answer is going to be the answer. What's that information going to gain me? How does that change our treatment for Jonas, or for our baby going forward? What we do different if baby is positive? What do we do? Yeah. And my midwife is like, well, we'll do some more ultrasounds. We'll watch them more closely. We'll check heart and bowel, and we'll just look at things as best we can before baby's born to make sure we're healthy. I'm like, let's just do that.
You never had terminating the pregnancy?
Oh my God, no. That was never an option for us.
So why was that never an option for you? Not just with him. I mean, just throughout your life. That was never, right.
I think part of that speaks sometimes to my privilege or my upbringing. I was a happily married woman that already had children and a husband that loves me and a stable home to live in. So for me, like that part was easy. It's easy to say it was never an option because that was my circumstance. Like that, it made it a lot easier to say that.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think the number one like demographic that has abortions in America is like married. I believe it's married mothers who already have kids, and then like they have like a whoops. Yeah. Once their kids are almost out of the house, like high school age. I remember reading that somewhere. I don't know if that's true, but I believe that. That's like, oh, like we got done with this. We're about to be empty nesters.
Starting over again.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I have my youngest will be 9 on Friday, so yeah, like that'd be a shock. But for me, having lost now 4 babies to miscarriage, like after seeing heartbeats and feeling movement, like for me, like nope, I can't.
Yeah, I've done 2 podcasts on like the topic of abortion with an abortion doctor and then pro-life feminists, and like it's such a complicated thing, and a lot of people say it's not complicated. I think like the partisan kind of sides would say it's not, but it's so personal and it's so complex, and I'm really mixed up on it
Yeah,
personally, like
yeah,
when it comes to law and things like that. So I don't know, but I'm just curious
yeah.
if that ever entered your mind, because I'm sure even in our situation, my wife and I think it probably would. It's like, oh, do we want to take this undertaking? I think it would. I'm being
It
honest.
gives you a pause to think like, okay, this is not the life we had
Yeah,
thought we were going to be
yeah.
living. This was a different plan. It's like, all right, well, this is the cards you got. What are you gonna do with them? What do we do at this point? And I don't, thankfully I have a very, very supportive husband.
Yeah.
Um and it kind of bothers me when I leave and people are like, what does he do while you're gone? I'm like, no one ever asks me what I do when he's gone.
That's an interesting thing,
No
right?
one ever asks
Yeah,
me that. I'm
yeah,
like, dang.
yeah. There is that
No one
crazy
ever
double
asks that.
standard with that.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, I get women are nurturers, and we're different. But he's their dad. Like,
Wow.
they're
So you guys were always on the same page when it came to that
oh yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
area
yeah. Yeah, for us it
of
was like,
keeping this.
do we do
I
this?
understand.
And early, because we were not early enough to do like the CVS testing. It's very early, so that's before 13 or 14 weeks. And then I was like, do we wait for an amnio? I was like, I just know that I could live with myself if I'm that 1 in 200
Yeah.
that has the amniocentesis has a risk of 1 in 200 of miscarriage. I was like, the answer is the answer. It's going to be the answer forever. Will I risk it? And we chose no. And I don't fault anyone who chooses differently, because am I being negligent by not testing? Like, am I, not preparing for the best for my child by choosing not to do it? Or am I tempting fate? I finally settled on that. I was like, let's just go ahead and do the ultrasounds. I was like, I'm all okay with that. But other people might choose differently. Like you had,
Well, I want to go into like your mindset of how you became the person that you are, Mindy. But before that, you also have a charity in Africa.
yeah,
So
I am a board
so
member, and
yeah, so you have 7 kids,
yes,
3 with special needs, and then because I guess you were bored, you didn't have enough to do. You started this charity in Africa that gives vocational skills to women that
yeah.
don't have them
So
in Uganda.
great, amazing friend of mine who is also ridiculously busy like I am. She now has 6 children. She didn't at the time. We met at our church that had a very active adoption ministry, and she was adopting her third, no, fourth. And we started our adoption journey at the same time. But we got our child much sooner than she did because she was adopting from Uganda. So we were raising money and talking about adoption. And Henry just came home to us much sooner than their son came home to them. Um, and then just several years later, we moved away. She's the kind of friend you just stay in touch with. They're just people that just kind of get in your soul, and they're not going anywhere. And I just kept seeing Uganda kept coming up in weird places again. I was like, that's interesting. All right. So instead of taking my big kids to Disney World, maybe we should take them to Uganda. The adoption lawyer who helped us with Henry, with his adoption, moved to Uganda and was running an orphanage there. And I was like, I know somebody there. So I kind of been messaging her like, hey, what do you think about this? Something we could do that would be helpful. I don't want to just show up and like be entertained.
Right.
Would it be helpful if we came? If not, we'll do something else. And we talked about it, and then uh, things just kind of fizzled. She was having trouble with the ministry, and then my friend Misty was like, I saw her launching this ministry in Uganda, and I was like, Misty, this is crazy. Like, this keeps coming up for me. Like, maybe I need to go to Uganda. And she's like, okay. I actually saved the text where she was like, I'm going in April. It's just me. You want to go with me? She's the kind of friend that I would just drop everything and fly across the world with. I was like, maybe. We'd been waiting for our tax refund. The year before, it'd been flagged as fraud. So we were like waiting and waiting. It took months and months the year before. And so this time I was like, all right, if I'm going, like, this ticket's not going to get any cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm going to go. We need to go. So I started praying. And then that was like on a Tuesday. And our refund came. I bought my ticket on Friday. I remember calling my mom, and I was like, okay, so it's happening. She's like, well, we'll pray. And I'm like, see if that's what you should do. And I'm like, I'm not actually calling to tell you to pray about this. I'm kind of calling to tell you this is what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to Uganda. with Misty, just the two of us, just two women, just flying to
Uganda. Like,
see
isn't that
Uganda.
where it?
Like you do. But she's the kind of friend I'm like, all right, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, Book of Mormon, isn't that where he goes? To Uganda. He's just like he wants to go to Orlando.
Yeah,
He goes
yeah,
to Uganda.
so that's where we ended up, and it was the like kind of like our vision trip. I met with our now director. I got to meet her in person, and our children's ministry director there now, and then we learned a lot. We did some things with trial and error, and kind of figuring out like what does this look like, and how do we not impart a lot of colonialism, trying to like bring a bunch of our
Yeah,
culture to them because
yeah,
they don't need that. Like
right.
really what we have on this side is we have the resources. They
Mm.
have all the manpower they need. We can provide some training and some help in that way, but really they just need to know that they're loved and supported, and like how can we support you?
You train the women in what kind of skills?
So they're all of our staff's Ugandan. We have 10 of them, and they learn hairdressing. So there's a lot of like
Okay.
braiding,
Yeah.
and then tailoring. So if they're learning to like
Okay.
sew clothes or pillows, or like they make all kinds of stuff.
And then they can go out and start earning their own
Yeah,
money. And,
yeah. So we have a graduation
yeah.
ceremony where
Wow.
we're done with like the things they need to like launch their business. Women, the tailoring students get a sewing machine and supplies, so they're ready to like start their business, and the hair students get basically a salon in a box. And
Wow. So how often do you go to Uganda every year?
before COVID, I was going about twice a year.
Okay.
But since COVID, Roger and I went last year for the first time. Missy took a trip recently, and we're planning out our trips for 2023.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're doing one or two, but yeah, it's I've taken teams of like 15.
And then now your older kids watch the younger ones when you're gone.
They help. They help. Yeah, we kind of like have a. It's not just Roger now having to hold down the fort.
Yeah.
Like when we first started 6 years ago,
Right.
it was a little different when I just disappeared for like
Okay.
10 days. I was like,
Okay. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think there's a lot here, and I think getting to the core of this, why I want to do this series, Mindy, is like, um, what's the driver? You talked a lot about ministry. You talked about prayer.
yeah.
You're a Christian. How much of an influence? How much of an influence do you feel that is on you and the way that you play your hands, to stick with this metaphor?
Mm. Every bit of it, like, but
Every bit of it.
oh yeah, but it's kind of changed a little bit for me as I've gotten older. It's moved from more of like head knowledge and religion
Yeah.
to moving that around and like sounds cliche, but like what would Jesus do? But
Yeah.
a book I read that really made me think about what does love require of me. That's always the answer, no matter the time, the space, like the culture, the century that you're living in. What does love require of me in this situation? I always said that if I had another tattoo, that would be what it is. I haven't done it yet, but I probably need to incorporate that somewhere. What does love say I should do? Like, not where's the line? Well, how far can you go this far and it be sin or not sin, or what's going to be the thing that makes God happy or not happy? And what's is abortion right or wrong in this situation, or that is what does love require in this situation?
I think about that a lot. I'm like newly Christian, I guess. But that resonates because it's like, if we're not gonna like, we can interpret everything about like what
Mhm.
would Jesus, blah blah blah. But like love, you love hard, you
Yep.
love deeply, and and that's, I guess, my biggest issue with. There's a lot of people who I think wave the Christian flag, and it's hard because I sometimes am very critical of those people.
Yeah.
And saying like, but you're so harsh. You're so harsh to other people. You're so trying to own libs or whatever it is.
Right.
And I don't understand how you can, em- why are you not trying to embody more of what Christ stood for? Like, I think it was Russell Brand was just talking to Jordan Peterson. I just posted on my Instagram recently, and he's like, "What's the point of Christianity if we're not going to try to embody the love of Jesus in others?"
Yeah,
What's the
I
point?
agree. I growing up in the church, and I said like the church globally,
Yeah,
there's a lot of things we've just gotten completely wrong. I've seen young girls who in the youth group who end up pregnant, probably by a boy in the youth group.
yeah.
And then when her family wants to have a baby shower for her, they're told she can't have it at the church.
They're not married or
No, because
something.
they're not married and she got pregnant out of
Right.
wedlock. And like, but you're the same people who would be condemning her if she'd had an abortion, but you won't celebrate that. Like, do you see why so many women, the abortion rate inside the church is the same as it is outside the church? And I can see exactly,
You were raised Christian.
like very, very, very Christian. My dad's a
From
pastor,
okay.
very fundamental. Like I was in church the Sunday after I was born.
Okay. My parents are atheists. It's an interesting thing. They weren't always, but they
Yeah.
are now. And there's an interesting thing here because um, how do so many Christians, and like right or wrong, whatever, but
Yeah.
get that, don't get that, or get that wrong? How is that possible?
I heard the best description I ever heard of this is that there's a little heresy in all of us. And I
Yeah.
believe that. But I
Seems like a
also
lot.
feel like the church forgets that Jesus reserved his harshest criticism for the Pharisees. And
Yeah.
the church, like, that's us, friends.
I mean, isn't that when he was the
That's
most upset? Is when
us.
you're using the church for those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can really understand how radical Jesus was. I don't think we get that. We have this picture of like, this loving Jesus, all safe and not even meek, but weak.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the right picture at all. He was
Calling people out. Yeah.
and hanging out with people undesirables
Right.
that the church today definitely calls
For sure.
undesirables. Like those were his people, like women, children, social outcasts. Yup, that's who he surrounded himself with.
And that seems like the biggest critique of Christianity is
Yeah.
these hypocritical, these like ugly, judgmental Christians. And it just, for me, who's like fairly new to like reading the Bible regularly and
Yeah.
stuff, it seems so clear.
Yeah.
It's so clear to me. How is it not clear to people who will probably have a similar background as you of being raised in the church their whole lives?
It's very hard when you like start shaking some of that out. It was foundation shaking for me.
Yeah.
Foundational. Like I don't know what I'm even standing on. Like I don't understand. Like just things just started like unraveling. And really what I found it was that a lot of it wasn't Jesus.
Just people.
It was people, and like that meant so well for me. No one was trying to teach me or train me anything that I now think is probably not right or wrong.
Yeah.
It was just what they'd been told and what they'd been told. And they just stopped matching with who I believe, who I know everything about Jesus tells me who he is. It doesn't match. How
Yeah.
could Jesus say that to somebody? Like, how could you say if someone that it doesn't make sense? Like, I don't, I struggle with a lot of that because I was brought up very much like homosexuality is wrong. It's absolutely a sin. And you can't be homosexual and be a Christian. Well, then I met some.
Yeah.
Then I met some, and I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? Like, this is
Well, that's all.
how is this happening?
Even if you want to go down the road of saying it's a sin, which I'm not saying, I don't know, but like even like we're all sinners. Why is that sin?
Right.
Why is that sin? I mean, Jesus didn't talk about homosexuality, but he talked about divorce.
Yeah.
So like there's so much
Yeah.
here that me, who's like not an outsider anymore, I wouldn't say, but like very new to it, just gets really frustrated. The
Yeah.
trans issue, I've had a bunch of trans people on my podcast, and they're treated so terribly by people who like the first thing on their Instagram bio is like Christian or like, I love Jesus. And they're so brutal. And they say to me, like, you being kind is just like saying that their sin is okay, or saying it's like, well, hold on. Like you want to just like be harsh to people. You want to be mean to people.
That's going to win
It's
them.
crazy.
That's like, when has that ever been effective
Yeah.
tool to convey the love of Jesus, and why someone would want to like lay down their life for that?
Yeah, it's really wild. So that has been a huge motivator for you. The way
Yeah.
you interpret the Bible, the Jesus' word and stuff is like, what would Jesus do if he knew in this situation that there were, Down syndrome kids that needed a home, he'd bring them in.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. And if we could do something to keep families together, and that's as simple as giving a woman an education so that she can provide an income so they can eat and hopefully go to school, Why would we not do that?
Yeah.
Why would we not do that? I feel like if something is going to be true, it has to call something truth. It has to be true in all times and all places. It's not for here and now. Then it's cultural. That's not necessarily make it bad. Culture is what it is. It's different. It's changing. It's different parts of the world. They have their own. They're beautiful, but don't call that truth. That's something that everyone else has to live up to, or that they've displeased God somehow. Truth was it was the same truth in 200 AD as it was in 5000 BC, and true now. If it's then it's not truth. Call it something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder what would motivate if there were other people like you out there who are bringing in special needs kids and starting charities. I truly do wonder what the motivating factor would be if it wouldn't be like a religious motivating factor, because it's I think morality. I've studied a lot of morality,
Yeah.
the moral foundations of Jonathan Haidt and the philosophy of it and everything. It's like what would be the motivating factor to say like this is the right thing? I'm sure that there are a lot of people that do wonderful things like this
Yeah.
without it, but I'd just be curious about like what was the spark in them?
I think it
Yeah,
has to be love, and I believe God is love.
yeah.
And I heard the
Just
best
another interpretation
yeah,
of love.
the
Just
best
yeah.
description of this is someone says like think of God as like as glitter. Glitter's in this tube. Once you pop the top off that thing, glitter's everywhere.
Yeah.
Glitter, it will not all every bit of it go back in that tube. It will never happen. You'll find glitter on people who don't know they have glitter on their face, but you'll see it there. You'll find glitter in places that you never like. I did not bring that glitter into this room. How is there glitter in here? So you will find God everywhere because
Yeah.
that's what glitter does.
Yeah.
It gets everywhere. And you can't get it back in the box. So I really, really, really like my glitter not staying in that box
Yeah.
because I see it everywhere. People who don't believe.
Maybe they just call it glitter.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I see it in places that they don't know they have it on them.
Yeah.
I see that
Yeah.
on you.
Like
I
God's
see
working in them. They don't
yeah.
call it that
Or
or they don't say
yes,
that.
if
Yeah.
they call it something else, I'm like, I don't know if that matters.
Yeah.
I don't know what it matters. I think there's far fewer rules than how I was originally taught. I don't think he gets as caught up in that
Yeah.
as sometimes we do because we like rules. I like knowing where the lines are. I like knowing what the rules are. I like to know who's in. I like to know who's out. And that's a terrible way to live your life.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, it's really interesting how, like, just talking to you, how non-judgmental you are about people who take a different approach when it comes to things like abortion. Because there are
Yeah.
some of the most judgmental people that I've met and encountered are the pro-life people.
Yeah.
I mean, pro-choice people can be really judgmental too, but the pro-life people about that, and like, you've like earned your right to be so kind of, and you're not. And I think that that's also something that is so interesting about you as a person, Mindy. Is
Yeah.
like,
It's just not simple. I think
yeah,
we really want to make this a black and white issue. For many, many, many years, I absolutely believed it was. And then people will open their ears. They will find people very, very close to them
yeah,
who have been impacted by this. And then you find out like, this is not as black and white as I thought. Do I agree with their decision every time?
for sure.
Wasn't mine to
Yeah,
make. And I'm not the one that has to deal with that. And I don't know that I get to tell somebody else in a different circumstance how they have to do that. Because, like I said, I have a very supportive husband. I have a great marriage. I got people who love me. So, yeah, it was easy relatively for me to choose that. So, for me to impose that same thing on someone else, it's a lot of privilege to speak that way when you haven't lived it. You don't know. You think you know what you would do. You think you know. But I've talked to far too many very, very strong Christian women who made a different choice and live with it every day and sometimes hate themselves for it. And they don't and the church is not a place they feel like they can ever talk about that. And the church has made it that way.
yeah. So one of the issues I think is really big in like society today is a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose. I think that's where a lot of our problems come from because
Mhm.
we've never been like more comfortable as far as like
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
things like that, like it's like air conditioning or whatever. But suicide is at its highest or one of its highest points
Yeah.
ever. drug overdose is the number one cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds is like fentanyl and opiate overdoses. Like a lot of these, depression,
Yeah.
clinical depression, anxiety is through the roof. I've watched it. I've been teaching for 17 years, and I've watched even among teenagers skyrocket. And one of my favorite books is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Love it. And it's all about the search for trying to find purpose and meaning. And when in 2018, when I had a stroke, I was, it was kind of like hit or miss for a little bit. And I got a lot of letters from students, and the ones that hit me the hardest for giving me like a sense of like purpose and meaning was not like, oh, Mr. Roosh, I miss you, or I hope you get better. It was, I need you here because my mom's crazy, and you're the person that I can connect with to help make sense of this. Like,
yeah.
I need you here.
Right.
Like, you're needed.
Right.
I went hiking at Zion National Park, and there was a place called Angel's Landing. I think that's what it's called. And it's like a thin, there's like cables and like there's sheer drop offs on both sides. And I was so scared to do it. But when I was younger, I'd do that stuff all the time. I had a motorcycle. I was nuts. But now it's like, it's not like, now it's like I can't die. People are counting on me. I got kids.
Yeah.
I got stuff going on. It's not just that people will be sad, but like people are counting on me.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what I found. I'm very curious on your thoughts on this. Seems to be the solution to the nihilism, the giving up, the life is a black hole. What's the purpose? No, is when people really count on you. My great aunt, she was old. She was in her 80s and not doing well. And we got her a cat. And the stupid cat was so spoiled. And she lived for another like 7 years because she's like, I can't die. I got to take care of this stupid cat.
Like she didn't like it, but she loved it.
Yeah, like it gave her real purpose. And I think there's something there to this. Like, you have purpose in your life. Like, if you just disappeared, it's not that people will be sad. Of course, most people disappear. People will be sad. They'll have, kid, next of kin, whatever it is. But no, it's like people won't just be sad. If Mindy's gone, it's like, oh shit, our lives just got way harder. Like, oh no. Like, that's, I think is that like an aim, I guess, to aim for like, if you would disappear,
to put them all in a really bad spot.
They would all just be like really frustrated because their lives would get harder. That because of you, because of your presence on this planet, people's lives are easier. They're more filled with ease. They're better in some way. And without you, then it would be like hard as that, because like then you have a purpose. You have like a reason to be there. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think part of it is you have to know, like, what are you doing with that purpose? Like, some people can feel that pressure of like, they need me, and that's I can't do anything. Like, I'm stuck in this, and everybody's pulling at me, and it feels like pressure and weight. Whereas I try to think of as more of, because one day I will disappear. That's reality. It's like, what do I want? I don't think about this real often. I'm still kind of with my head down, just
doing
the thing. But I want it to be what I remember about Mindy is she made me feel good. It was fun to be with her. I knew she cared about me. I knew I was important to her, and that she taught me something silly, something stupid. I don't care.
So you don't have that sense of like, I'm here doing this work, and if I wasn't here, then this work wouldn't.
Somebody else would. Somebody else would. Somebody else would. I believe there's things that God has for us to do, good works for us to prepared for us to do. But I think this mission is way, way bigger than me. And if I'm like, deuces, I'm not doing it, somebody else will step. He will make somebody else to fill those shoes. Somebody else will fill that purpose. Because I think it's just his story is too big. It's too important. It's too much of like humanity. But what was love called me to do is too important for somebody else to, like, if I decide like, all right, I'm going to shirk this duty, somebody else will take it up. I have a lot of faith in this generation that's coming up. They work differently. Definitely they work differently, but they're not afraid to ask some really hard questions that I've kind of been told to shy away from my whole life. Like, don't question things. This is the answer. It is because it is. If you're asking questions,
so what do you think
wrong
is
with your faith?
for that generation though that is struggling with a sense of purpose though, because the depression, the clinical depression, you know, is on the rise. What would you say would be um, a way that you would advise them to combat it?
Find s- find a mentor, and maybe not even call it that word, because that's it seems like you're giving someone with a lot to do something else to do.
Mhm.
But spend time with them. Find someone who you think, gosh, they're really cool.
They've got it
I
together,
lo-" Maybe not even that, because I'm sure that person doesn't feel that way.
right?
They don't feel that way.
Right, but from you, you
Yeah, from
see
you,
something
you
that
feel
that
like,
you
wow,
admire.
man, if I like, she really must have whatever. Go hang out with them, bro. Find out they're a real person. I
Yeah.
think if you can level that playing field a little bit and figure out
That they're
they
not
don't
something
have
that's
it all together,
yes,
you
yes,
feel a
yes.
lot better about yourself at like,
Yeah,
okay, I am not failing at life. She feels the same way I do sometimes.
yeah,
And here's how she's able to deal with it. So find, because I guarantee you they're not perfect. Find someone that you look up to or appreciate and let them show you their clay feet. Let them show you how they are messing it up in
yeah,
some area. And then of course show you how they're what you can learn from them about how they are doing things really well. This is where they're killing it. Learn that. But also just know they're not getting it all right either.
right. Because then you see the humanity in them. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, they are humans just like me. They're a flawed
Yes.
person just like me. So then
Yes.
maybe I can look. I can get to a point where
Yes.
others might look at me and say, oh, they have it all together.
Yeah.
When no one has it all together.
Yes. Like they
But
don't
you
have
find,
everything figured
yeah,
out.
you find ways to get through it.
They're broken too. Like yeah, oh, broken. Just lean into your brokenness. Like, all
Yeah,
right, no, you're not gonna get it all fixed. But a cracked pot, like it still hold water. Even if you glue it, it might leak some.
yeah,
It might leak some water out, but it's still gonna carry it.
yeah. So, you know, the series is live a life that demands an explanation. I think that we got that. And your explanation, a lot of it, you'd say, is through your faith. Uh,
Oh yeah, 100%.
yeah,
Even though it's changed and keeps changing.
yeah,
Jesus is. I can't get over him.
yeah,
I can't get over him.
yeah. The people I've had a lot of atheists on the show, and they, you know, it's like, well, it's just like a fictional, it's a delusion. It's like, look,
Mm,
even let's just okay, go with that. It's a delusion, and it's a delusion that got you to live this life.
yeah.
Then that's something.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
something. So you know, that's I think
With
you
meaning,
can't be
with
ignored.
purpose
Yeah,
that you we're all looking for. Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here?
yeah. Does your just for closing, does your charity have like a website or something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, what's it called?
HeshimaMinistries.org.
What is it? Heshima Ministries.
HeshimaMinistries.org. And we are at Heshima Uganda on
Okay,
Instagram.
very cool. Mindy, thank you for sharing your story.
My
This is
pleasure.
really cool.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate it. And thank you guys for watching.